Joining me now is the Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas. She was one of two Democrats to join that trip to the D.C. jail today. Representative Crockett, good to see you tonight. Thank you for being with us.
Great to see you as well.
Let's talk about this trip. Why were you on it? You were one of two Democrats on it. What was your purpose in being there?
Yeah, there had to be someone that was going to keep them honest. I mean, we know that the people that were going on this trip, especially the one that led this trip, they have a little bit of an issue with the truth. So there needed to be someone, because you couldn't walk in and film exactly what was going on. And, you know, it's interesting. It's kind of like there's seemingly two versions of what happened on January 6th. I had a completely different experience walking into this jail. And also, my chairman wanted to make sure, I call him my chairman, sorry, my ranking member wanted to make sure that there was someone who actually had a frame of reference for what prisons and jails look like and what those conditions can look like. And that would be someone like me, considering the fact that I've done criminal defense for almost 2 decades, and also I've been a civil rights lawyer.
Let's talk about what you saw while you were there. We heard a little bit of what Marjorie Taylor Greene suggests that she saw. What did you see?
I saw a delegation of elected congressional members that were starstruck when they got an opportunity to finally see the January 6 inmates. I saw privileged people is what I saw. The criminal justice system that I'm used to seeing does not afford them tablets that allow them to end up with a #1 song on iTunes because they're able to record or they're able to text their family members whenever they want to. I've never had a client that had the ability to access a laptop for weeks so that they could review in the privacy of their single cell jail their discovery. The privilege that I saw was actually quite astounding, even though we were supposed to talk about or review how bad the conditions were. If anything, I have never seen a jail that afforded so many privileges to anyone. And as I said, I've been licensed in Texas, Arkansas, and in federal courts for almost 2 decades.
So this is important because you have been a criminal defense attorney. You have seen inhumane conditions, and that's a real thing, right? Bad conditions in prison in America is a real thing. And to the extent that there are members of Congress from both parties who'd like to tackle that, it's a separate issue than treating January 6 rioters as political prisoners.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, we know what this was. This was nothing more than a political stunt. And while you're covering this, that is part of the problem. The media continually gives Marjorie Taylor Greene this microphone to spew nonsense and lies. Essentially, what happened today was a field trip. The Republicans got to see their heroes. The January 6ers got to see their heroes. Everybody was kumbayaing. I was the one that looked a little out of place, for sure. Definitely no one was coming up to me, so excited to talk to me. There was one gentleman that wanted to talk to me. But, you know, what's frustrating is the idea that I think back to Nelson Mandela and what he went through. And I've actually walked that prison cell that he was in. He was not afforded these opportunities. So these false these false comparisons that they are drawing, it's really offensive because we have real issues in this country. We have real political prisoners. We saw what happened with Brittany Griner, and we saw where the Republican Party was on her actually being released. They were against that. They felt like that was problematic. Yet under these circumstances, for whatever reason, they felt like it made sense to have senior colleagues, senior Democrats go in and sit down and talk to and coddle people that tried to kill them. It did not make sense. And so having somebody like myself and Robert Garcia, who are both freshmen, who were not victims on that day of their heinous crimes, we were the only ones, in my opinion, that were really best suited to actually go in, because it did not make sense to try to put my members, my colleagues, at risk of something even more tragic happening in this jail.
Just for the record, I've been excited to talk to you all day, and you and I have always enjoyed our conversations. Congressman Garcia did make the point that he said these prisoners are being held in much better conditions than most black and brown inmates in prisons across the country. This is a point that you make a lot, that black and brown people have been in lousy prison conditions, incarcerated in per capita percentages much higher than pretty much anywhere else in the free world for a very long time. If that were really the topic we were discussing tonight, that would be a good thing. If a bipartisan group of members of Congress were touring prisons around the country to say, how do we make this better, that would be a good thing.
that would be a fantastic thing. That would actually be doing what we were elected to do, which is to solve problems, to make life better. You know, listen, it's still prison. So prison is never going to be the Ritz-Carlton, right? But at the same time, we're talking about are they living in inhumane situations or not? And I can tell you there is nothing inhumane about this. They were able to freely move about. They were able to communicate without having to worry about a recorded phone call. They had air conditioning, which is something we don't have in Texas. They also, I asked about the women in the facility, and I asked them about their access to sanitary napkins. They've got that. That's free. Their medical care is free. A lot of places, they charge you for that kind of stuff. And so, you know, it's still jail. I get it. It's never going to be nice, right? But in the grand scheme of jails, let me tell you something. I've had a client that died. I don't see someone sitting there and being neglected because they're not heard. They've got literally iPads or whatever they call them, tablets, where they can make a sick call electronically. And they have access to these tablets for 22 out of 24 hours. The only 2 hours they don't have access to them is when they're charging them. I mean, it's absolutely insane. This was an excuse for Marjorie Taylor Greene to have another press conference. This was another excuse for them to be able to speak to these January 6 defendants and put their stories together without having to worry about them being recorded, which is normally what everyday individuals have to go through when they're going to see their loved ones and their friends.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, always good to see you. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Great to see you, too.